All right, so welcome to the deep dive where we dive deep, right, into all those fascinating sources that you guys send our way,
That's right.
and we try to see what we can pull out of them, right?
Okay. Yeah,
And today's a pretty wild pairing, I'll be honest.
it is. Yeah.
So we're going to be looking at Lewis Carroll's, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland,
Oh, yeah. Classic.
but also alongside that a rather large selection from the Law of One,
That's right. The raw material.
the raw material,
Yeah.
precisely.
Big collection of channeling there. Lots of stuff to work with.
So it might seem like a very strange pairing on the surface. I mean, Alice in Wonderland, it's this fantastical, children's story.
Right. Totally whimsical.
Yeah, completely. With talking animals and just completely illogical happenings and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Very different kind of reality.
Very different. And then you've got the Law of One, which is this dense exploration of universal principles, consciousness, the nature of reality,
That's right.
big topics, big stuff.
Hmm.
So the question we're wrestling with today is
Right.
is can we actually find any meaningful connections between these two?
Yeah. That's the question. Can we?
Can we? And maybe even some surprising insights that we wouldn't have gotten by looking at these things in isolation.
That's the hope. You never know until you dive in.
Right. That's the fun of this. So we're gonna really plunge into these sources with a very open mind, I think,
Yeah.
and see what emerges when we kind of hold them up to the light together.
I love that. Yeah.
And I think it's we might discover something interesting about reality itself, about how we perceive it,
Right.
and maybe even something about our own inner journeys.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's
Yeah.
so much potential there.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit, and maybe a good place to start is with something that kind of feels immediately present in both of these works, even though it's presented in very different ways, and that's the whole idea of the nature of reality and
Yeah.
illusion, right?
I mean, it's right there on the surface with both of these, isn't it?
It really is,
I
yeah.
mean, one of the things that strikes me right away is how both of these sources, they present a reality that isn't quite what it seems. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like in Alice in Wonderland, the rules, they're just constantly in flux.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like Alice changes size
Right.
for basically no
For
reason.
no reason at all.
It just
It
happens.
just happens.
Um, the animals, they talk
Right.
like the most natural thing in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and cause and effect, it often seems like it's optional.
Yeah, that's like the rules don't really apply.
It really
Wow.
it really does, right? It's like the ground under your feet, both literally and figuratively. It's always shifting. You never know what's coming next.
Never know what to expect.
Never know what to expect.
And then you have the Law of One, which actually puts forward this quite profound idea, right? That the reality that we experience every day,
Yeah.
what they call third density,
Right.
is actually a form of, well, they use the term sleep and a forgetting, and they even say an illusion born of illusion, which is, when you stop and think about that,
It's a bit of a mind bender.
it's a lot to take in.
It is. It really is.
So what they're saying, right, is that what we perceive as this solid objective reality
Right.
is actually just a very specific way that our consciousness
Yeah.
filters a much larger, much more unified field of existence. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like our perception is creating the reality that we experience.
Yeah.
And that there's this much deeper level to reality that we're not even aware of.
Yeah. They even say this really mind-bending statement. They say space-time and time-space concepts are those concepts describing as mathematically as possible the relationships of your illusion,
Right.
that which is seen to that which is unseen. I mean,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
so
it's deep.
so what they're saying there is that our everyday experience
Yeah.
it's like a carefully constructed interpretation
That's a good way to put it.
of a much deeper reality that we're not really
We're not really in touch with,
yeah,
at least not consciously.
not consciously. So it kind of makes you wonder, right?
That is.
When Alice, she drinks the potion and she shrinks,
Yeah.
or she eats the cake and she grows. Right. Like, could we look at those shifts as as her, maybe metaphorically, as her navigating different
Different levels of
yeah,
reality.
different states of consciousness, right?
Right.
Different ways of perceiving that underlying reality that the Law of One talks about. I mean, it's a little bit of a leap.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
It's an interesting interpretation.
But the sheer fluidity of her experience,
Right.
right? The way that she's just constantly, changing and things are shifting around her.
It does.
It does seem to kind of echo this idea that reality isn't it's not this fixed solid
Yeah.
thing that we might think it is.
It's much more fluid and malleable than we tend to give it credit for.
Exactly. Yeah. So what if her changing size, right?
Yeah.
What if that actually reflects a change in her awareness of her surroundings
Interesting.
rather than a literal like physical transformation?
Yeah, I like that. So it's not so much that her body's changing,
Right.
but her perception is changing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's leading to the experience of the changing size.
Right. That her consciousness is kind of expanding and contracting.
Right.
And that's what's leading to these shifts.
That's a really cool way to look at it.
Mhm.
It brings up this really interesting point about the power of perception,
Yeah.
right? And how our perception really does shape our reality.
Yeah, and Alice's journey, I mean, she's constantly being thrown into these situations where she has to reevaluate her understanding of how things work.
Yeah, it's like she's constantly being challenged.
Constantly challenged, yeah. I mean, she's encountering these bizarre characters
Right.
with these equally bizarre perspectives,
Yeah.
and it forces her to kind of question her own assumptions about the world, about
Yeah.
how things are supposed to be.
It's like she's being forced to wake up from that sleep and forgetting that Rod talks about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like she's being shaken out of her ordinary perception of reality.
And that actually leads us quite nicely into this idea of consciousness and perception,
Yeah.
right? And Alice's consciousness definitely seems to evolve as she kind of tumbles through Wonderland, right?
Yeah, she definitely goes through a transformation.
She does. Yeah. I mean, she starts off quite proper.
Right, very much a product of her time.
Very, very much so. Yeah, very conventional, and while she's often, completely bewildered by everything that's happening around her.
Right.
She also demonstrates this growing resilience
Yeah.
and a kind of knack for adapting to the absurd.
She rolls with the punches,
He still rolls with it. Yeah.
Like whatever crazy thing happens next, she's like, okay, I guess this is reality now.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually aligns really well with a key idea in the Law of One.
Or does it? Which emphasizes the really crucial role of conscious realization
Yeah,
in our spiritual development.
absolutely.
And Ross states this really directly. He says, it is absolutely necessary that an entity consciously realize it does not understand
Yeah.
in order for it to be harvestable.
Mm.
I mean, just think about what that implies for us, for anyone.
Right.
Like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, what it's suggesting is that recognizing the limits of our current understanding
Yeah,
is a fundamental step in our journey of growth.
that's powerful.
Yeah.
So basically, the first step to greater understanding is admitting that you don't understand.
Yeah, which is it's a humbling thought, but it's also really powerful.
It is.
Because it opens us up to new possibilities, right?
Yeah.
To new ways of seeing things.
Totally.
And the Law of One also talks about this thing called the veil, right? Between our conscious and unconscious minds,
Wow.
and how this affects how we perceive reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like a filter, on our awareness.
Yeah.
It's preventing us from seeing things as they truly are.
Yeah. It's like we're looking through a kind of distorted lens.
That's a good way to put it.
And Ra describes this veil as a kind of barrier that limits our conscious awareness,
Right.
and it prevents us from fully grasping this interconnectedness of all things, right? This underlying unity with the Creator.
Yeah. It's keeping us from experiencing that oneness
Yeah.
that we're all part of.
And it's interesting because they also mention that dreaming is actually an activity of communication through this veil.
Oh, wow. So our dreams are like
Yeah.
messages from our unconscious mind
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
trying to break through.
Trying to communicate with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe those strange illogical dreams that
Yeah.
we all have, right?
Yeah.
They're actually more significant
Yeah.
than we might think.
I love that. So it's like our unconscious mind is trying to tell us something,
Yeah.
but it has to do it in this symbolic language of dreams.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes you think, right?
It does.
Could Alice's entire adventure in Wonderland
Yeah.
with its dreamlike logic,
Yeah.
right?
It's very dreamlike.
And just all these bizarre happenings, could that actually be her own personal experience
Wow.
of navigating this veil?
I love that interpretation. So it's like her subconscious is trying to communicate with her conscious mind
Yeah, yeah.
through these strange encounters and transformation. And
Yeah.
it's peeling back the layers of her understanding
Right.
in a way that her waking mind can't fully grasp, at least not at the time. Not at the time, yeah. And the dreamlike quality of it all definitely feels
It's definitely there.
very, very present.
It's very strong.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's one of the things that makes the story so captivating, I think.
And the constant shifts and changes that Alice undergoes. I mean,
Yeah.
those also resonate with ideas in the Law of One.
They do, yeah.
I mean, her size
Yeah.
fluctuates wildly.
Wildly.
I mean, she's tiny,
Yeah.
she's huge.
Right.
Her emotions swing from, frustration to curiosity.
Yeah.
And her understanding of the rules of this strange world
Well,
is constantly being challenged.
instantly being thrown out the window.
Thrown out the window, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the Law of One talks about these shifts in what they call density,
Right.
and the transformation of what they call mind, body, spirit complexes.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So could there be a connection there,
Possibly.
even if it's not a direct one-to-one mapping?
Yeah, it's not like you can say, okay, this part of Alice's journey equals this density,
Right,
and this
yeah.
part equals that density.
Yeah.
But there's definitely some overlap in the themes.
Yeah. I mean, it's like she's in this perpetual state of adaptation.
Right.
She's just
Trying to make sense of it all.
trying to make sense of these nonsensical circumstances.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture that the Law of One presents,
Yeah.
we encounter this concept of energy centers,
Right.
which you might know as
Chakras.
chakras, right?
Yeah.
And Rack explains that blockages in these energy centers,
Yeah.
particularly in areas like the blue ray,
Right.
which is associated with self-expression,
Yeah.
the indigo ray, which is linked to the influx of intelligent energy,
Right.
and even the lower centers that are connected to love and basic survival,
Right.
that these blockages can actually distort our perception of reality.
Yeah, it's like they're preventing the energy from flowing freely.
Yeah, yeah,
And that can mess with our perception.
yeah, and they can hinder our spiritual progress.
Exactly. It's like having a kink in a hose.
Right.
The
Yeah.
water can't flow through properly.
So following that idea, right?
Yeah.
Could Alice's struggles in Wonderland, right? I
Yeah.
mean, her difficulty in expressing herself clearly,
Right.
her bewilderment at these illogical events that she keeps encountering,
Yeah.
even her frustrations, her fears.
Yeah.
Could these be seen as a metaphorical representation
Yeah, it's interesting.
of these energy blockages?
Like maybe she's literally running into these blockages
Yeah, yeah.
in her journey through Wonderland.
And perhaps her journey is in a way about confronting those and potentially unblocking those inner centers.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just a fantastical story.
Right.
It's also a story about inner growth and transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like when she can't express herself to the Queen of Hearts,
Yeah.
right?
That's a good example.
Is that like a Blu-ray issue playing out,
Yeah.
allegorically?
Possibly.
Yeah.
It's definitely something to think about.
It is, yeah.
How these energy centers
Yeah.
might be playing out in these symbolic ways.
And what's really
Mm.
particularly interesting when we kind of look at Alice's journey through this lens of the Law of One
Yeah.
is the role of the various guides and figures that she that she meets along the way.
Totally. Yeah, she encounters all sorts of strange characters.
All sorts of strange characters. You know,
Yeah.
you've got the White Rabbit
Right.
who kind of sets her down the rabbit hole in the first place.
Yeah, he gets the whole thing started.
Yeah, yeah. You've got the Cheshire Cat,
Right.
who's always appearing and disappearing
Yeah.
and offering this cryptic advice.
Right, never quite giving her a straight answer.
Never a straight answer, yeah. You've got the Mad Hatter
Right.
with his nonsensical pronouncements.
Always having tea.
Yeah, yeah, always having tea.
It's like none of these characters are really there to help her in a conventional
Right.
sense,
Right.
but they're all pushing her to think differently.
They are, yeah. They're presenting her with these alternative perspectives, however bizarre those perspectives might be.
Right.
And they're challenging her preconceived notions of how the world should operate.
It's like they're breaking down her old ways of thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
And forcing her to build new ones.
And this actually reminds me of how the Law of One describes Rey themselves.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
How so?
Yeah. They describe themselves as humble messengers of the Law of One,
Right.
whose goal is to help decrease distortions in understanding
Yeah.
and to stimulate the process of seeking.
Right, to help us find our own way.
Yeah, yeah.
To guide us without telling us exactly what to think.
Exactly.
Just like those strange characters in Wonderland.
Yeah, yeah. And they also mention the Confederation of Planets,
Right.
which they describe as a group that was formed out of this fundamental desire, this desire to serve.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting because the parallel is really quite striking, right?
It is.
Just as Ra and the Confederation,
Yeah.
they're aiming to guide humanity towards a greater understanding of universal principles,
Yeah.
the peculiar characters in Wonderland.
Yeah.
They act as these catalysts for Alice's own learning.
Yeah, they're her guides in a
Yeah.
way. Even if they're even if not always the most helpful guides.
Not in the traditional sense.
Right. But they're definitely getting her to think differently.
Yeah.
To question things.
Yeah, they're presenting her with situations that force her to question,
Yeah.
to adapt,
Yeah.
and ultimately to grow.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah,
And that's really what it's all about, isn't it?
it is.
This,
Yeah,
This process of growth and transformation.
yeah, and it all seems to kind of point toward this underlying theme of the quest for meaning and truth.
Yeah.
Right? Because despite her constant bewilderment,
Right, even though she's confused most of the time.
most of the time, yeah, Alice clearly has this intrinsic desire
Yeah.
to understand the strange world that she's found herself in.
Absolutely. She's always asking questions.
Always asking questions, yeah.
Trying to figure things out.
Yeah, she's trying to impose some kind of logic
Yeah.
on this apparent madness.
Yeah, she's trying to make sense of the nonsensical.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is kind of what we're all doing, right?
Right.
Right.
And that actually that resonates really deeply with the Law of One's assertion
Okay.
that many individuals in our density, right,
Yeah.
are seeking outside their illusion.
Right.
They're searching for a more profound meaning
Yeah.
in their lives.
Yeah, they're looking for something more
Yeah.
than just the everyday, the mundane.
And the Confederation's very purpose,
Right.
as explained by Ra,
Yeah.
is to offer understanding and guidance
Yeah.
to those who are actively seeking.
Right. So they're there to help us.
Yeah.
If we're ready to receive their help.
And Ra even states
Yeah.
that the ultimate desire of the Creator
Okay.
is for all parts of itself to express and experience love,
Love. Yeah.
and that this fundamental understanding,
Yeah.
it can be accessed not just through intellectual concept, right.
So it's not just about thinking about it.
Not just about thinking about it, but
Yeah.
but also through practices like meditation.
Right.
So it kind of makes you wonder, right?
It does.
If Alice's journey,
Yeah.
in its own kind of chaotic way,
Right.
is also a personal quest for some kind of deeper truth
Yeah.
within this seemingly nonsensical reality
Yeah.
that she's experiencing.
I love that. So it's like both of these stories
Yeah.
are really about this journey of self-discovery and
Yeah.
this quest for meaning and truth.
And if we think for a second about
Okay.
this concept of polarity, right?
Well, yeah.
Which the law of one talks about as this spectrum between service to others and service to self, as this kind of primary mechanism for developing the potential to do work in the
Oh,
universe.
yeah.
It's interesting to see if any echoes of this might be present in Alice's interactions in
Yeah.
Wonderland. Right.
So, like, are there characters who represent service to others
Yeah.
and characters who represent service to self?
And I don't know that it's a direct, clear-cut parallel.
Sure, sure.
Right. But you can maybe argue that some characters, like
Wow.
like the Queen of Hearts, for instance, with her very self-serving tyranny,
Right.
might represent one pole of that spectrum,
Yeah.
while others, even in their own kind of, quirky way,
Right.
they offer some form of guidance or interaction
Yeah.
that maybe could be seen as being more in line with service to others.
Right. Yeah.
And the law of one itself, they neutrally observe both polarities.
Right.
Right. They're not saying that one is good and one is bad.
Yeah. They're just presenting them as different paths.
Yeah, they're just presenting them as different paths of learning.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
ultimately, when you look at Alice's time in Wonderland,
Yeah.
I mean, despite the confusion and the frustration,
Right. It's not always easy for her.
not always easy, no. But those strange encounters that she has,
Yeah.
they really do act as these catalysts for her growth.
They do.
Right. She learns to adapt. She learns to question authority, like the Queen of Hearts.
Right.
She learns to trust her own instincts
Yeah.
in this bizarre environment.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
and that idea of experiential catalyst is